At her son's wedding, she was told to leave like she was no one. She paid for the entire ceremony, yet ended up humiliated. But what she did next left everyone speechless. Stay till the end to see how one woman turned heartbreak into a brand new beginning. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more emotional and powerful. My name is Eleanor Turner. I'm 74 and I've spent my entire life in a quiet suburb just outside of Asheville, North Carolina. The kind of town where the wind carries the smell of pine trees and everybody knows your dog's name. My home is a modest ranch house with chipped siding and a wraparound porch my late husband built with his bare hands. It's too big for one person now, but I can't bring myself to leave. Every creak in the floorboards reminds me of him, Walter, and the life we built together. We had one child, our son, Jason. He was our miracle baby after 5 years of heartbreak. I remember holding him the first time and feeling like the whole world fit in my arms. Walter and I raised him with values, respect, gratitude, hard work. And for a while, it seemed like we had done something right. Jason grew up to be a charming, ambitious man. He started his own financial consulting firm in Charlotte and did quite well for himself. He married young to a sweet woman named Kayla. They gave me my grandson, Austin, who is now in college. But when Jason and Kayla divorced, something in him hardened. After that, Jason became distant. His calls came less frequently. Visits turned into quick drop-ins. And then last year, he introduced me to Taryn. Taryn was younger, polished, and always seemed to be rehearsing a line. She smiled too much and blinked too slowly, like she was performing sincerity. Still, I kept my judgments to myself. If Jason was happy, that's what mattered, at least that's what I told myself. Then one crisp fall afternoon, Jason stopped by with a big grin and an even bigger announcement. I'm getting married again, Mom, and we want to do it right this time. No courthouse, no backyard party. This one's going to be special. He looked genuinely excited, like the boy who used to beg for fireworks on the 4th of July. Before I could respond, he added, and we were hoping you might help cover some of the costs. Just a bit to make it perfect. Of course, I said yes. What mother wouldn't? That was 6 months ago. Since then, my quiet retirement has turned into a whirlwind of florist consultations, venue deposits, dress fittings, and catering invoices. Taryn sends updates, not requests. I'm always Miss Eleanor to her, never Mom. Still, I told myself this was just how things worked now. Maybe if I gave enough time, money, patience, I would get Jason back. Maybe he would look at me the way he used to when I surprised him with homemade cinnamon rolls after school. But deep down, something felt wrong. And I didn't know it yet, but the worst moment of my life was waiting for me. Just a few weeks away, under fairy lights, champagne toasts, and the soft hum of wedding violins. The weeks leading up to the wedding passed in a blur of credit card swipes and forced smiles. Taryn had taken over the planning entirely. She texted me lists of vendors and expenses with no greeting or thank you, just $signs and deadlines. I told myself not to take it personally. Maybe this was her way of staying organized. But each new message felt more like an order than a request. One Saturday afternoon, they came by to touch base. Jason looked tired, but he was smiling, that slick, polished grin he now used at client dinners. Taryn was all glitter and gloss, in her designer jeans and pearl-studded sneakers. She barely acknowledged me as she floated through my living room, commenting on my furniture like she was touring a thrift shop. "Oh wow, this china set is so vintage," she said, running a manicured finger along the edge of my mother's old teacup. "Bet you could sell this for a small fortune on Etsy." "They're not for sale," I said as gently as I could. She blinked. "Right? I just meant, they're very nostalgic." Jason coughed and changed the subject. "Mom, we've picked the venue, Ridgeview Estate. It's got this amazing view of the Blue Ridge Mountains. Taryn's obsessed with it. It's stunning," she added, already scrolling through photos on her phone. "But pricey. We're counting on you, Miss Eleanor." Miss Eleanor. The words stung every time. I nodded and forced a smile. I'll do what I can. Before they left, I offered to help with the guest list or seating chart. I've planned a few weddings back in my day. I know it can be overwhelming. Taryn smiled tightly. Oh, don't worry, we've got it covered. You just focus on enjoying the day. Okay? Enjoying the day. Funny, considering I was funding most of it. Later that night, Austin called from college. You sure you're okay with all this, Grandma? I'm fine, baby, I said, even though I wasn't. He paused, then said, She doesn't treat you right. Dad barely calls anymore unless it's about money. You deserve better. His words sat heavy in my chest long after we hung up, but I brushed them off like lint on a coat. I wasn't doing this for Taryn. I was doing it for Jason, hoping that somehow, through all the spending and silence, I would find the boy I used to know. The next morning, I opened my email to a message from Taryn. Subject, dress code for mothers. Please wear lilac or blush. No ivory or gray tones. Also, please avoid pearls. Tiffany's mom is wearing diamonds, and we want to avoid clashing aesthetics. Thanks. It wasn't a request. It was a command. I stared at the screen, remembering the soft gray dress I had picked out. The one I had worn when Jason graduated from college. The one Walter always said made me look elegant without trying. I deleted the message without replying. But in that moment, I knew something had shifted. I wasn't a mother of the groom. I was a sponsor. And sponsors apparently don't get opinions, only invoices. The morning of the wedding planning meeting at Ridgeview Estate, I dressed with care. A soft cream blouse, my favorite slacks, and the same brooch Walter had given me on our 30th anniversary. Shaped like a hummingbird, delicate and dignified. I didn't wear it often, but today felt like one of those rare occasions that deserved it. I arrived 5 minutes early. The valet barely looked up when I gave him my name. Inside, the receptionist offered a stiff smile and told me, They're already in the garden with the planner. Already? I had been told to arrive at 10 a.m. sharp. It was 9:55. I found them on the terrace, surrounded by a team of people in black shirts and headsets. Jason was scribbling notes. Taryn was gesturing grandly to the floral designer. The planner, a sleek woman named Marla, didn't bother with introductions. She launched right into it. We're going for a luxury rustic theme. Think champagne tones, eucalyptus runners, white oak chairs. Oh, and we've moved away from roses. Peonies are the new vision. Walter loved roses, I said gently. Taryn tilted her head like she didn't quite hear me. That's sweet. But this is our day. The planner rolled out the seating chart. Immediate family will be at the head table. 8 seats total. I scanned the layout. Jason, Taryn, her daughter, her parents, a couple of cousins. Nomi, where will I be sitting? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Marla barely looked up. Table 9, near the kitchen. That way servers can accommodate dietary needs more easily. Taryn added with a bright smile. We thought you would be more comfortable with the other seniors. Dietary needs? I wasn't on oxygen. I wasn't in a wheelchair. I walked in here under my own strength in shoes with a heel. My mouth went dry. Jason stood quietly, eyes on the ground. Jason, I said, hoping he would see me. Really see me. He didn't meet my eyes. It's just for one night, Mom. One night. But I would remember it for the rest of my life. I nodded slowly. Of course. Whatever works best. The rest of the meeting blurred together. Discussions about napkin folds, imported linens, drone footage for the ceremony. I smiled, nodded, and wrote another check when they passed me a revised invoice, 30% higher than the original estimate. When I got home, I sat on the porch, my tea untouched beside me, the check still in my purse. I stared at the swing Walter built and imagined what he'd say if he saw me now. Probably something like, Ellie, you ain't got to pay to be disrespected. That night, Austin FaceTimed me. Grandma, you sure you're up for this? I wanted to say no. I wanted to scream. But instead, I said, I just want Jason to be happy. Austin didn't reply right away. Then, with his jaw tight, he said, Not if it costs you everything. I didn't answer. I didn't have one yet. But I could feel something inside me beginning to crack. And once it did, nothing would ever be the same again. 3 days before the wedding, I received another message from Taryn, this time, a text. Hey Eleanor, quick note. Please don't wear that silver gray dress. We've changed the color scheme. All mothers are to wear lavender. Thanks. No hello. No hope you're well. Just a smiling emoji and an instruction. I stared at the phone, dumbfounded. That gray dress wasn't just fabric. It was memory. It was the same dress I wore to Jason's white coat ceremony. The one Walter loved so much he called it my lucky charm. I'd had it altered just last week to make sure it fit right. Called her. No answer. So I drove to the boutique where I'd bought the original dress and asked if they had anything in lavender. Lavender? The clerk said, raising an eyebrow. Not the easiest shade for warm tones like yours, but let's see what we can do. 2 hours and 5 changing rooms later, I left with something modest. Long sleeves, silver trim, and just enough dignity to carry me through the day. It wasn't me, but maybe that was the point. When I got home, I found a new voicemail from Taryn. Hi Eleanor. Just checking if you've returned the gray dress yet. Also, the brooch is kind of churchy. Maybe go with something more minimal. Don't want to upstage the bride's mom. Thanks so much. My brooch. Walter's brooch. That was the last straw. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just walked to my room, opened the closet, and held the brooch in my hand for a long, quiet moment. I wore it anyway. The day of the wedding arrived. I was picked up in a sleek black car Jason had arranged. The driver didn't speak, just nodded and opened the door. At Ridgeview Estate, staff moved with practiced urgency. Guests arrived in pastel gowns and tuxedos, greeted with champagne flutes and the scent of peonies drifting on the wind. I was shown to the library to rest, not to mingle, not to greet guests, to wait. When I finally made it out to the ceremony lawn, the seating was as promised, table 9, next to the kitchen. I recognized no one. Taryn's cousins, some neighbors, a woman who worked with her at a spa. They were polite but distant. I could see Jason at the altar, standing tall in his tux, looking like a stranger dressed as my son. Taryn walked down the aisle like she was floating. Her daughter tossed petals in front of her. Her mother beamed beside her, and I was just a silhouette in the corner. During the reception, I stood off to the side, hoping for a moment, any moment, to feel like I belonged. Then Taryn approached me, drink in hand. There you are, she slurred, smiling tightly. Couldn't stay away from the spotlight, huh? I blinked, stunned. I've been out of the way all day. She leaned in, her smile fading. You know exactly what you're doing. Playing the victim so people will pity you. Before I could respond, Jason appeared. What's going on? He asked. She's trying to ruin my day. Taryn snapped, pointing at me like I was an intruder. Jason turned to me, his voice low and cold. Ma, maybe it's better if you just head out. That was it. I nodded, smoothed my lavender dress, and walked through the garden, alone. The car ride home from Ridgeview Estate felt longer than it was. I sat stiff in the back seat, the envelope in my purse still holding the final check. My last gesture as Jason's mother, or so I thought. When I walked into my house, the silence greeted me like a blanket of grief. I didn't turn on the lights. I didn't even change out of the lavender dress. I just sank into Walter's old recliner and stared at nothing for a long, long time. The image of Jason telling me to leave echoed in my mind. No protest, no defense, no hint of regret, only discomfort, like I was a burden to be managed. I didn't cry that night, not because I wasn't hurt, but because the pain had moved past tears. It had settled deep, somewhere behind my ribs, where my love for my son used to live. The next morning I made tea. I didn't drink it. Instead, I pulled the envelope out of my purse and set it on the table, and I left it there. At noon, my phone buzzed. It was a call from Jason. I ignored it. Then another call. From Austin. I answered. Grandma, he said, his voice low. I saw everything. I tried to talk to him afterward, but he told me to stay out of it. I'm so sorry, baby, I whispered. You shouldn't have been treated like that. I know. He was quiet, then said, Dad called me this morning. He said the venue's threatening legal action because the final payment wasn't made. It didn't, I replied calmly. Wait, you didn't send it? I held it, I said, staring out the window. I've paid enough. Austin didn't speak right away. Then he said, I'm proud of you, Grandma. That night, Jason showed up at my house. 3 loud knocks, just like when he was a boy coming home from school. He walked in without asking. Why didn't you answer your phone? He snapped, waving a folder in his hand. The estate is threatening to sue us. You're the sponsor. They need the rest of the payment today. I looked at him calmly and said, I'm not paying. You what? I'm not paying the rest. I repeated, my voice steady. I didn't pay to be humiliated. He groaned, pacing. It was one misunderstanding. Taryn had champagne, people were emotional. You just walked out. You told me to leave, Jason. I was trying to keep the peace. No, I said. You were trying to keep your wife happy, even if it meant turning your back on me. You said you'd fund the wedding. I said I would help, I corrected. Not fund my own erasure. Jason's voice dropped, cold and sharp. Do you know how this makes me look? That venue has high-profile clients. If this gets out, I don't care about your image. I care that you let your wife point at me like a dog and you said nothing. He glared at me, jaw clenched. You're being selfish. There it was, the word every mother dreads. But this time I didn't flinch. Selfish, I said softly. No, Jason. I'm finally being fair to myself. And I walked into the kitchen, leaving him alone in the hallway, just like he had left me at his wedding. Jason didn't slam the door when he left, but the silence that followed was louder than any tantrum. For once, I didn't chase after him, didn't call to smooth things over, didn't fold myself small to fit in the corner of his world. Instead, I brewed a fresh pot of coffee and called Mr. Whitaker, my lawyer of nearly 20 years. I think it's time to review my estate plans, I told him. I want to make some changes. We scheduled a meeting for the following afternoon. Just after I hung up, there was a knock at the door. A woman stood on my porch in a navy pantsuit, holding a leather binder. Ms. Eleanor Turner? She asked. Yes. I'm attorney Brooke Ellis, representing Ridgeview Estate. I'm here to confirm your intent regarding the unpaid wedding balance. I nodded and stepped aside. You're welcome to sit, but this won't take long. She remained standing, pen ready. We were informed that a significant balance remains. The venue is prepared to pursue legal action if payment is not received within 72 hours. I met her eyes. I understand. And my response is simple, I won't be paying. She blinked. May I ask why? I folded my hands. Because I paid to be part of my son's wedding, not to be sidelined, disrespected, and humiliated. I was not treated as a valued guest, let alone the groom's mother. She scribbled in her notes. You'll likely be hearing from our legal department. So be it, I replied. The door clicked shut behind her, but I already felt lighter. That evening, Austin dropped by with a box of donuts and a worried look. Dad's furious, he said. Taryn's threatening to cut me off if I keep visiting you. She can try, I said. But you're grown now. They can't make your decisions for you. He grinned. I told them I don't take orders from people with unpaid bills. I laughed, really laughed, for the first time in weeks. You stood up for yourself, Grandma. That's something to be proud of. The next day, I met with Mr. Whitaker. We sat at his long mahogany desk, and I handed him a list. Remove Jason from the will, I said. I want everything to go to Austin. He's the only one who's acted like family. Whitaker looked at me over his glasses. Are you sure? As sure as I've ever been. We signed the new paperwork by noon. A week later, I put my house up for sale. The place was too full of memories, some sweet, some bitter. But mostly, it had become a museum to a life I no longer lived. I wanted something fresh, something small and sunny. A place where no one could shut me out again. A month passed. The lawsuit never came. I heard through Austin that Jason and Taryn were forced to pay the balance using credit cards and a loan from her uncle. The honeymoon was canceled. The stress had worn their shine off quickly. But I didn't feel revenge. I felt release. Let them deal with the mess they created. I had new plans. New peace. Weeks later, I moved into my new apartment on a breezy Saturday morning. It wasn't large, just 2 bedrooms and a cozy balcony. But it had big windows, warm light, and most of all, it was mine. No ghosts of arguments. No memories hanging from the ceiling. Just peace. The complex sat across from Lincoln Park in East Chapel Hill, a spot I used to walk past with Walter on lazy Sunday afternoons. I never imagined I would end up here, but sometimes new chapters start in the most unexpected places. Austin showed up early that day, helping me carry boxes and set up the living room. "This feels good," he said, placing my favorite lamp by the reading chair. "You look lighter." I smiled. "I feel lighter." We unpacked in silence for a while. Then he asked, "Have you heard from my dad?" I shook my head. Not a word since the last time he stormed out. Austin looked down at the roll of tape in his hands. "He's still blaming you, you know. Taryn too. Says you blindsided them." "I expected that," I said quietly. "Some people don't understand that love isn't supposed to be blind obedience. Especially not when it erases who you are." He didn't say anything after that, just gave me a long, understanding look. That evening, I stood on my balcony with a cup of tea, watching kids play frisbee in the park. For the first time in years, the silence didn't feel like loneliness. It felt like freedom. I started writing again. My old gardening blog, once abandoned, got a fresh post titled, "Letting Go to Grow." I shared pictures of the potted basil and tomatoes I'd planted in my balcony boxes, and wrote about starting over in a space that fit my soul. The response shocked me. Within a week, the blog had thousands of views. People left comments, shared stories, and even asked for advice on how to grow herbs in small spaces. "You've got a gift," Austin told me, helping me set up a basic camera for short videos. "TikTok would love you." I laughed. "TikTok? At my age? Grandma, trust me. People your age are exactly who they want more of. You're real. You're honest." With his help, I made a few short clips, just me talking about repotting plants or showing off my mini mint garden. They took off faster than I expected. I was dubbed the Garden Granny by a group of followers and was even invited to do a segment on a local lifestyle show. And somewhere in the middle of all that, I met Doris. She lived 2 floors down, widowed, like me, witty, sharp, and an avid poetry reader. We started having tea on Sundays, trading old recipes and talking about everything from books to birds. "You know," she said one day, sipping chamomile, "we're not fading, we're blooming late, and that's a beautiful thing." I laughed. Late bloomers make the most lasting flowers. And for once, I wasn't clinging to the past, I was building something new. A few weeks after I posted a blog entry called "The Cost of Peace," something strange happened. My phone buzzed with a text from a number I hadn't saved in years. The message was short, just 4 words. "I'm sorry, Ma." It was a message from Jason. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over it for several long seconds. Not because I was angry, I wasn't not anymore, but because I would reached a place where I finally realized something crucial. Not all apologies come with the change you hope for. I didn't respond. Not out of spite, but out of preservation. Later that day, I told Doris about it over our usual tea and banana bread. She didn't flinch. "You don't owe anyone a reply just because they finally remembered you exist." I smiled. That's the tricky part about motherhood. You keep leaving the porch light on, even when no one comes home. She reached over and squeezed my hand. But sometimes you have to turn off the light for your own rest. That stuck with me. That weekend, I attended a seniors digital literacy workshop at the local community center. I thought I would be the oldest one there, fumbling with buttons and asking what an app was. Instead, I found myself helping others. One woman asked how to attach a photo to an email. Another wanted to learn how to FaceTime her granddaughter. It gave me purpose. Soon, the center asked if I will be willing to volunteer regularly. I said yes without hesitation. On Wednesdays, I helped folks navigate their phones. On Fridays, I shared gardening tips with a small circle of retirees, many of whom now referred to me as Miss Ellie the Green Thumb. That's how I met Robert. He sat quietly in the back row of one of my classes, silver-haired, kind eyes, neat button-up shirt. After the session, he approached me with a smile. "You're Eleanor Turner, right? I think we used to work in the same hospital back in the 90s. I was in cardiology." My eyes widened. "Dr. Moore? I remember you. You were the one who used to write poetry on prescription pads." He chuckled. "Still do, just with less caffeine now." We got coffee the next week. Turned into lunch. Then a Saturday jazz concert. Then an invitation to walk the lake trail near my apartment. Robert didn't try to impress me. He didn't talk over me or about himself nonstop. He just listened, shared stories, and asked thoughtful questions like he genuinely wanted to know me. It wasn't romantic at first. It was something better. It was safe. One evening, sitting on my balcony, watching the sun cast gold across the park, Robert leaned back in his chair and said, "You make me look forward to tomorrow, Ellie." My heart didn't race. It warmed. For the first time in a very long time, I felt like I wasn't just existing, I was living. And not for Jason, not for Desiree, not for what I had sacrificed, but for me. The weekend after our walk around the lake, Robert and I drove out to a little beach cottage his sister owned in Emerald Isle. It wasn't fancy, just a whitewashed bungalow with creaky steps and the scent of salt always hanging in the air. But it felt like magic. We spent mornings sipping coffee on the porch, wrapped in fleece blankets as gulls called overhead. At night, we listened to jazz from his phone and watched the stars appear one by one, like the universe was applauding the quiet we'd earned. "You ever think it's too late to start over?" I asked him one night, my feet tucked under me as we stared out at the moonlit ocean. He looked over with a soft smile. "Only if you think living is something that stops just because the world got loud." I didn't know it yet, but that would become the opening line of my next blog post. When we returned home, I found a letter in my mailbox. Not a bill, not a flyer, a handwritten envelope with familiar script. From Jesus. Inside was a card. No birthday, no occasion, just a single paragraph. "I know I can't take back what I said or did. I've replayed it 1,000 times. You didn't deserve to be treated like a stranger, or worse, like a burden. I let Taryn lead the way because it was easier than standing up. And that's on me. If you ever want to talk, I'm here." I read it 3 times. Then I placed it in the drawer next to my favorite gardening gloves. I didn't cry. I didn't smile either. I simply felt still. That night I told Robert about it. He didn't pressure me to respond. He just nodded and said, "Closure doesn't always come in conversations. Sometimes it comes in choosing not to keep reopening the wound." A few days later, Austin visited again. We were potting marigolds for a community project when he said, "Dad's furious that you haven't replied." I glanced at him. "And how do you feel?" He hesitated. "Relieved. You deserve peace, Grandma. Not more weight." We finished in silence, the kind that didn't feel awkward, just respectful. By summer's end, my blog had over 20,000 subscribers. One of my posts about replanting after heartbreak got picked up by a local magazine. A producer even reached out about doing a short documentary on late life reinvention. "I just wanted to write about tomatoes," I told Robert one evening. He chuckled. Turns out, people were hungry for more than gardening tips. Doris and I started co-hosting weekly brunches for widows in the neighborhood. Robert began teaching basic CPR at the same community center. We were all, in our own way, blooming again. Jason didn't call. He didn't write again. And that was okay, because for the first time, my worth wasn't waiting on an apology. It had already been claimed by me. 2 years to the day after the wedding that changed everything, I stood barefoot on the beach, waves lapping at my ankles, the sun rising in slow honeyed streaks across the horizon. Robert was beside me, holding a thermos of coffee and humming something slow and sweet. He looked over and smiled like he'd just found treasure buried in the sand. "You think it's strange," I asked. To be this content so late in life? He shook his head gently. I think it's rare, and I think you've earned it. That morning, I let go of one last thing. The guilt of choosing myself. When we returned home from the trip, the apartment felt even warmer. The walls didn't echo like the old house did. The quiet here wasn't empty, it was intentional. Full of purpose. Full of peace. I didn't hear from Jason again, and I stopped checking. Not because I didn't care, but because I finally understood that some people come into your life to teach you how to hold on, and some teach you how to let go. Taryn and Jason ended up downsizing their lives, moving into a modest condo in Wilmington after the venue sued them for the balance I refused to cover. Austin kept me updated in bits, just enough for me to know they were surviving, but not thriving. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt released. Austin became a regular visitor. Every Saturday morning, he showed up with donuts or fresh fruit and helped me tend to the balcony garden. This place smells like lavender and cinnamon, he once said. Like calm grew roots here. He was right. My blog, Ellie in Bloom, reached 50,000 subscribers by fall. I started doing little live streams on how to grow herbs in small spaces or how to make your own compost with kitchen scraps. People from all over the country wrote in to say I inspired them, not because I had it all figured out, but because I didn't pretend to. I just kept showing up for myself. Every day. One evening, Robert surprised me with a small velvet box. My heart skipped, but when I opened it, I found a beautiful silver bracelet with a tiny charm shaped like a shovel. For the woman who digs deep, he said. We laughed until our sides hurt. Later, while we watched a meteor shower from the rooftop of his building, he whispered, I don't need a label. Just promise me you'll keep letting yourself bloom. I nodded, tears in my eyes. Only if you promise to water me with coffee and compliments. He kissed my hand. Sometimes life doesn't give you the ending you thought you wanted. But if you're lucky and brave, it gives you something better. A new beginning that finally feels like home.